Yeah, I mean, animation, I still attend figure drawing classes, you know. And since the pandemic, I found some great ones that are online, actually from Barcelona. There's this great one that Bendit Ferrer does from Barcelona. But life drawing, I didn't even understand at the beginning too. When Disney had such an emphasis on life drawing, what's the point, you know, if you're drawing cartoon characters? But really, life drawing is the foundation of so much putting over an idea of a figure in space, trying to get proportion, trying to get attitude, trying to get all that. I can't recommend that highly enough, that you really spend hours every week doing figure drawing. And they don't have to be finished drawings. It really is more about structure than it is about finish. That's the thing. And as you're saying with rough animation is more crucial than cleanup animation, at least initially, because you're trying to get the gesture, the expression. And if you're very tight and you're worried about how it's going to look finally, you do have to worry about that ultimately. But first and foremost, you've got to communicate, you know, the weight of the character and the acting and the attitude and the emotion. And sometimes that can best be done roughly. So, of course, the name of my production company, I was trying to figure out different names. At the beginning, it was going to be called Night Owl Pictures because I always work late at night. That name was taken. But my second name that I ran by my son Jackson and my wife that they liked is Scribbly Pictures. And it's there for a reason, because I draw very scribbly, and all that stuff starts that way. And I highly recommend working loosely before you start tightening up, because if you start tight, then you're reluctant to change things. You may lose some value of expression and all that. So I would, if you can, I would work loosely and roughly first, and then tighten. And the same thing with a story almost too. You work out the broad outlines of a story before you start working out all the refinements, and you get, you know, more refined as you go along. So, well, one thing is it's a process, you know, that you may get your foot in the door, perhaps not even doing exactly what you want to do, you know, that you may be, well, I really want to do storyboards, but they have an opening doing something other than that, or I really want to be an animator, but they have an opening doing, you know, something else. So I would say getting on the premises and getting involved in a production is a valuable thing, even if you're not doing exactly what you want to do. I think persistence, you know, I was rejected by Disney when I first sent my portfolio there. They said, go away. And then I heard about CalArts, and I sent them a portfolio, and I got in there, and it really threw me for a loop, because I'm like, wait, now I thought I was done with school, and I'm going back to school. So I'd say be persistent in what you're doing, and every path to your destination has its ups and its downs, so try to ride the wave a little bit and don't get too caught up. Another thing that I tell people, your work will improve most if you can be your own toughest critic. You're going to have to learn how to be not defensive when you show your material to other people and accept criticism. That's one of the biggest things you have to learn. So it doesn't hurt to start early and to be willing to let other people see what you've done, because there can be a gap between what you think you've done and what other people perceive it. If you're going to work in animation where it's a mass medium and there's an audience involved, it's crucial that you start making a distinction between what you think you're communicating and what they're getting, and they may not be the same thing. And if they're not the same thing, then you have to figure out why they're going here. I thought I sent them here, and they're over here. Why are they here? Did I do something confusing? Is it not clear enough? Is it too slow? Is it just not pushed far enough? Is there something else that happens just before it that upstages what I want to have an impact? No, it's so you've got to show your work to trusted people and you know, a circle of friends who can be honest with you, and then take the criticism and step back a little bit and try and absorb it without right away. No, you don't get it. You don't understand. You really have to learn to do that professionally anyway. So it helps to start now. One of the weird slight characteristics that generally, not just me, but other people who have advanced, is it's a collaborative art form, and you got to play well with others, you know. And some people do that better than other people, and some people get away with not playing well with others. You know, they can be divas and they can get away with it. But generally speaking, in animation, and it wasn't a skill I totally worked on; it just sort of evolved. But I think it's good just to, you know, it goes to all those things, all those basic work things: being reliable, being on time, being articulate, listening to other people, executing ideas, plussing ideas. All those things are valuable skills to have, and the skills that you can kind of work on, I think. In terms of, yeah, stripes, I think in the early days I did, when people were complaining about things on movies, I was a sounding board for a lot of people. So when they were looking for a young director to step into the ranks, they turned to me partly because a lot of people would come to me and tell me ideas that they thought were good. And I became kind of I tried to empower those other people when I became a director. So Glenn Keane had all sorts of ideas that the directors weren't listening to. And I thought if I was ever a director, I'd want to get those ideas on the screen. It's nuts they're not listening to those ideas. So I became kind of a vessel for getting other people onto the screen. So, but I'd say keep working, and the trick is sometimes it's a little tricky because if you demonstrate that you're really good at something, they may not want you ever to do anything else. It's always a tricky thing. Like, he or she is great at that. Do that forever, we can count on you. And you're like, well, I actually want to do this. And then you've got to convince, it helps to have advocates. And you stumble into those, mentors and advocates. So if you can get into any sort of studio situation, show people, if you're not doing what you want to be doing, show people that might have some sway what you think you can do. Let them know what you can do. And be persistent, but not overbearing somehow. You've got to find a line there. But I think if you have talent and a lot of luck is I was very lucky and I was in the right place at the right time, and you can't control all that. But you can control being ready for when luck happens. So I'd say that.
Everyone
That
feels
word
so
is
far
weird
ahead.
because when I was a student, that phrase didn't exist then. It probably should have,
Yeah.
but yeah, the feeling that I don't deserve this or whatever, is something about that. I don't know, certainly I've felt at times I've been in over my head. That's a feeling that never goes away. You're doing something you haven't done before or on a scale you haven't done, and you're worried and you're nervous. It helped in our case that Ron Clements and I were partners and we could use each other as moral support. So when we get in arguments with Jeffrey Katzenberg, we could come back with each other and kind of, complain to each other about things, and then we had a shoulder to cry on. But I think imposter syndrome, I think if you can get some objectivity about your own work and have other people show it to other people, and if they are impressed with what you're doing, then it isn't you just overreaching. I think you really are legit, and you've got to get that validation from other people, not just from yourself. But you do want to validate yourself. You want to, and hold yourself up to high standards, but if you think that you're good, then be confident in that and try and get, hopefully other people will recognize that, and they should, hopefully. It's tough for me because different studios may have different standards and it may depend on what you're doing. Generally speaking, your portfolio shouldn't have copies of characters of any studio. It really should be more original work. There is a basic question with some of the visual development, character design portfolios. Do you want to impress people that you're a stylist that works a certain way? I have my style and here's my style. Or do you want to show them that I'm a person of many, I can do this, I can do that, I can do that. I would say generally, I think it's better to have a range of things you do rather than one narrow thing. So if you've got a variety of things, I would try and make your portfolio that. And I would certainly put your best foot forward, so I'd be fairly critical in your own portfolio choices. If something is not up to the level of other things, then I'd weed it out. And I think it's better probably to have fewer good pieces than a lot of stuff. And if you're submitting to a certain studio, you may do a little detective work even to find out, how does it work, how many people are on the review board, what are their backgrounds, just to know kind of what you're heading into a little bit maybe. I mean, I've been inspired all the time, both by live action and animation. I mean, I'm a big fan of many directors, Frank Capra in terms of his storytelling, Howard Hawks, Billy Wilder, Alfred Hitchcock, Orson Welles, Fellini, Kurosawa, all those, household names really. You can't hurt, and Spielberg is a great filmmaker, but, look at those films and try and figure out how they achieved what they did, really study them. And I did some things where I would take certain sequences and I would kind of storyboard what they did to learn about staging and things like that. I was inspired coming up by, the Disney features that I saw, and when I was a kid, they only came out every 7 years and they weren't on videotape, so you'd have to go to a theater and see them. Or I had Super 8 versions, just like a 10-minute section of the film, and that's how I really learned to animate in some ways. I had these little 10-minute reels before, I tell you, it was before there was videotape. And so I would crank through these things, and I created notebooks looking at Snow White on this thing, and I broke down the animation. I looked at 8 frames here, 4 frames here, this is the line of action. And I really created sort of a, stuff for myself to look at and be inspired by. But I'd say always seek out things that you like and then try and figure out how did they achieve the effect that they did. What is it they did? And you have to step back a little bit. What is it really that made those moments special? And Miyazaki or whatever, his staging is so impeccable, and you can get those books of his stuff where it has all this, this shot-by-shot staging and all that. You could look at that and why did he cut to this angle? Why is he over here right then? Why did he go from this to this to this? Anyway, but yeah, there's plenty of inspiration out there, and not just animation. And I think theater. I still go to plays all the time. I get very inspired by seeing a great performance on the stage. I get inspired by listening to music. All the short projects I have in mind are based on music because I love the way music works with animation. I like seeing dance with animation. I just saw Romeo and Juliet, the Matthew Byrne version, where it's sort of set in a psych ward. You got to see it, but it was really inspirational in a way. It's just the way they moved, and they do a thing there where this couple kisses, and they're dancing. They kiss their lips are locked for 2 minutes as they roll around on the stage, and they go up the stairs, they go over here, and they are kissing the entire time. It's unbelievable. But you see that, and you're like, who came up with that? And and Matthew Byrne came up with that. So anyway, yes, soak in all the arts, really. There's stuff out there in all of them for you. So thank you all for coming. I've got